There is a sign you have seen your whole life. In a window, on a corner, in the back pages of the paper. 3 words. Room for rent. It is one of the most ordinary phrases in America. And I want to sit with it for a minute because I have come to believe it is the most honest description of a deal we were offered. A deal we took and were taught to call freedom. Here is what a room for rent is. It is a place you can live. You can move in. You can paint the walls, hang your pictures, fill it with everything you love, and make it the warmest, most beautiful room in the whole building. People will walk by and admire it. You can pour your entire life into that room, and you still will not own it. You cannot knock down a wall. You cannot add on. You cannot sell it because it was never yours to sell. You cannot leave it to your children. You build no equity no matter how many years you pour in. And on the day the person who actually owns the building decides otherwise, the rent goes up, the terms change, the notice goes on the door. You find out what you always were: a guest, a tenant, somebody with good taste, living in somebody else's house. This is the story of the rooms we were handed. The stage, the storefront, the school, the block, the seat, beautiful rooms. Rooms we filled with genius. And the quiet, devastating fact underneath all of them, that they handed us the keys to a few rooms and let us believe we had been handed the house. Start with the room the whole world can see, because the gap there is the widest and the plainest. Black America does not merely participate in American culture. Black America is the product, the music, jazz, blues, rock and roll, R&B, soul, funk, hip-hop, not contributions to the American songbook, the American songbook. Pull black music out of the last 100 years and there is almost nothing left on the radio in any genre, anywhere in the world. The sound is ours. The sport, walk into the 2 biggest leagues in the country, and the men on the floor, the men on the field, are overwhelmingly black. The style, the way the whole planet dresses, the sneakers, the streetwear, the trends the luxury houses in Paris quietly copy every single season and send back down the runway. It starts on our blocks. We do not follow the culture. We are the culture. So here is the question that should stop you cold. If we are the product, who owns the store? Because it is not us. The record labels, the music publishing, the masters, the actual ownership of the recordings. That generations of black artists signed away before they were old enough to know what they were signing. The streaming platforms that now rent our catalog back to us. The leagues, the arenas the games are played in, the fashion houses that profit off. A look they did not invent. Overwhelmingly, not ours. Think about what that means. We built the sound and we rent it back. We fill the arena and we do not own the arena. We set the trend and someone else owns the label on the trend. We are the most influential culture on the face of the earth, and we own almost none of the machine that sells it. We are the performers on a stage that belongs to somebody else. And when the performance is over, we go home, and the person who owns the building counts the money. And when one of us does break through and own a piece, when Michael Jordan became for years the only black majority owner of a team in a league that is most black on the floor, we treat it as a miracle. It should not be a miracle. It is the exception that measures exactly how far from ownership we usually stand. And here's the part that turns this from a complaint into an indictment. Because there was a time we owned the stage, not the metaphor, the actual stage. When segregation locked us out of the white theaters and the white clubs, Black America did not just wait at the door. We built our own. A whole national network of venues. The Apollo in Harlem, the Regal in Chicago, the Howard in Washington, the Royal in Baltimore, hundreds of theaters and clubs and juke joints stitched together across the country. People called it the Chitlin Circuit, and it was black-owned, black-booked, and black-filled. The performer walked out onto a stage owned by us. The promoter was one of us. The dollar that bought the ticket circulated through the community, hand to hand, business to business, before it ever left. That was not a consolation prize for being shut out. That was ownership. The venue, the stage, and the door, all of it ours. And then the big doors opened. Integration gave us the arenas, the major labels, the stages 100 times bigger than the Royal or the Regal. And we walked through those doors, as we had every right to. But in walking through them, we stopped building our own. We traded a stage we owned for a stage we were only booked on. We got the bigger room. It just turned out to be in somebody else's house. Now let's go to a room we actually own. The Black-owned restaurant, the Black-owned shop. A real business, opened with real money, real risk, real years. The exact thing every voice tells us to go build. Support Black business. Buy Black. And it is right. Every one of those storefronts is an achievement, and I do not want a single word here taken as anything less. But walk into that restaurant and follow the money after it hits the register. Where does it go? The food came in on a truck the owner does not own. It was grown and processed by companies the owner does not own. The freezer, the fryer, the register, the card reader that takes a cut of every swipe, owned by someone else. The cleaning supplies, the paper goods, the soda in the fountain, the brands on the shelf, someone else. So the dollar you spend, proud to be spending it Black, lands in the register for one moment, and then almost all of it turns around and walks right back out the door into the hands of suppliers, wholesalers, and distributors we do not own. You can own the entire restaurant top to bottom and still be running someone else's business with your name on the door. Take the clearest example there is. Food. Nobody on earth can tell us we do not know food. Soul food is a global cuisine. We took the scraps, the parts they threw away, and built a feast the whole world eats now. The craft is ours beyond argument, but we cook it. We do not can it. We do not own the food processing plant. We do not own the national frozen dinner brand in the freezer aisle. We are not Swanson. We do not own the cold storage warehouses or the distribution network or the trucking lines that turn cooking into an industry worth billions. We own the recipe. Somebody else owns the factory. We own the labor and the genius of the food. We do not own the capital of the food, the machine that makes it and moves it at scale. And that is the law hiding underneath every single room in this film. Owning the storefront is not owning the industry. We own the faucet, they own the pipe. And as long as every dollar that hits your register flows straight back out through a pipe you do not own, the water was never really yours. It was just passing through your hands on the way back to the people who own the plumbing. Let me take you to the room we love the most, the one so many of us would defend with our lives, the historically Black college and university, and I want to honor it fully before I say one more word because it deserves it. The HBCU is the realest owned space we have ever had in this country. It is the one place where a Black student is not the exception, not the diversity number, not the only one in the room, not the one who has to code switch to survive the day. On that campus, the default is Black. The founder looked like you. The president looks like you. The whole homecoming, the whole culture, the whole architecture of the place assumes from the ground up that you belong. That is belonging without an asterisk. And in a country built the way this one was, that is priceless. Nobody is taking 1 ounce of that away in the next 4 minutes. But be honest about the foundation. Because the dependency in this room is not some modern accident. It is there in the founding stone. Many of our most storied HBCUs were founded and financed by white philanthropy and white religious organizations. The American Missionary Association, a white-led society, was behind a whole cluster of them. Fisk, Hampton, Talladega, Tougaloo. Northern white philanthropists poured in the seed money. The Slater Fund, the Peabody Fund, the Rosenwald money out of Sears. And the public land grant HBCUs exists because of a federal law, the Morrill Act of 1890. Government money, government terms. From the very first day, in many cases, the room was built with the landlord's lumber. Now hold both truths at once, because this is the part that requires precision. The founding was financed from the outside. The achievement was entirely ours. We took donated buildings and borrowed money and turned them into the single greatest engine of the black professional class this country has ever had. The teachers, the doctors, the lawyers, the preachers, the leaders, generation after generation, came through those gates. The money came from the landlord. The life came from us. And still, the ground was never ours. The accreditation that keeps the doors open is granted by bodies we did not create. The funding runs through federal and state channels we do not control. The endowments sit at a fraction of what comparable white institutions hold. Pull the funding, change the accreditation rules, and the walls of the room we love shake because we own the culture inside it and rent the ground it stands on. It is the oldest argument we have with ourselves. The one between Booker T. Washington, who built Tuskegee on the good graces of white Northern donors, and W.E.B. Du Bois, who warned that a thing built on somebody else's money is a thing held on somebody else's terms. That argument is still standing on this campus today. Come down to the street, the neighborhood, the block that is ours by culture, by memory, by 100 years of being the people who make it what it is. Ask anyone whose block it is, and they will tell you it is ours. But pull the deeds. The stores are often owned from somewhere else. The buildings belong to landlords who do not live within 50 miles. The capital, the lending, the mortgages, run through banks that never put a branch on the block because a line was once drawn around it on a map and colored the wrong shade. So a neighborhood can be 100% ours in spirit and own almost none of the ground it stands on. And you can see the whole tragedy in one word: gentrification. Because what is gentrification really? It is an eviction notice for a room you thought was yours. We make the block valuable, the culture, the food, the music, the cool that we breathe into a place. And the moment it becomes valuable, the person who actually owns the foundation raises the rent. And the people who made it worth something are the first ones who can no longer afford to stay. Read that back slowly. You do not get evicted from something you own. If they can price you out of your own neighborhood, then it was never, in the way that counts, your neighborhood. It was a room, and the rent came due. And now the room we were told was the finish line, the seat, the office, the mayor, the council member, the congressman, the president. And this is real, hard-won, paid for in blood, and it matters. Say that plainly and mean it. But understand what the office actually is. It is a hotel room. You can rearrange the furniture all you want. Slide the desk over by the window. Angle it toward the door. Bring in your own chair. Hang your own picture. Run the room your way for the length of your stay. But you cannot knock down a wall. You cannot add a room. You cannot sell it. You cannot hand the key to your children. There is a checkout time. They call it a term limit. The rules are printed on the back of the door, written long before you arrived, and sometimes written on purpose to limit exactly what the office could do the moment somebody like you was finally able to hold it. And housekeeping always has a key: the state that can overrule your city, the legislature that can preempt your law, the budget set by a structure you inherited and cannot rewrite. So picture it honestly: 100 black mayors running cities whose economies, whose tax bases, whose banks and utilities and industries are all owned and controlled from somewhere else. 100 people rearranging the furniture in rooms they do not own. We were told the seat was the house. It was a hotel room. You can hold every single seat on the council and not own one bank, one utility, one factory, one piece of the foundation the whole city actually runs on. The office is the furniture. The economy is the building. And we were handed the furniture and told we'd been handed the keys to the kingdom. Hear me clearly, because this is where people twist it. This is not vote less. This is not the seat does not matter. The seat matters. Take every seat you can win. But the seat is necessary and the seat is not enough. Hold the office and build the foundation. Rearrange the furniture and go buy a building of your own. So is this just the way it is? No. And I know it is not, because some of our own people looked at the whole arrangement, refused the room, and went after the house itself. Marcus Garvey did not open a storefront. He built a shipping line. He went for the ocean. Maggie Walker did not ask a bank for a loan. She chartered a bank. And a bank is not a room. A bank is a piece of the engine itself. The Chitlin Circuit owned the venues. Prince spent his career at war for the ownership of his own masters, and Jay-Z built a catalog to own his. Jordan bought the team. Every one of them understood the difference between the furniture and the foundation. And the clearest proof of all, the one that closed the entire loop, was the Nation of Islam. Whatever you think of the theology, whatever you think of the politics, set it to the side for 1 minute and look only at the economics, because the economics were staggering. They bought farmland, thousands of acres, across Georgia and Alabama and Michigan, and grew the food themselves. They ran their own trucks and their own cold storage to move it. They owned the processing, the bakeries, the fish import. They opened the supermarkets and the restaurants and the shops that sold that food. Grown on their land, hauled on their trucks onto their shelves. They ran a bank. They printed a newspaper, Muhammad Speaks, one of the widest read black papers in the country, on their own press. They ran their own schools, tens of millions of dollars, and a dollar that went all the way around the community before it ever left. That is the answer to every room in this film at once. Restaurant, but not the supplier. They own the farm, the truck, and the store. Perform, but not own the venue. They owned their own institutions. Rent the block. They owned the buildings. They did not ask for a seat at the table. They built the table, grew the food, and printed the menu. And yes, be honest, the empire shrank when its leader died and the movement split. And that is part of the lesson too. An engine built around one man is fragile, so build it to outlast the founder. But do not miss what it proves. Owning the foundation is not a dream. It is a memory. Somebody did it in our lifetime, in this country. Go back to that sign in the window. Room for rent. We spent 100 years filling those rooms with everything we had. Our music, our genius, our labor, our faith, our children's futures. And we made every one of them beautiful. And the whole time, the deed sat on a table in another room with somebody else's name on the line. They sold us the floor and kept the deed and taught us to be grateful for the room. So here is the charge, and it is not despair, because despair is a lie. The arrangement tells you to keep you renting. Keep the rooms, fill the stage, defend the school. Love the block, take the seat. Take every seat you can win. But stop finally mistaking the room for the house. Stop decorating a rental and calling it an inheritance. And no, this is not a fantasy somebody dreamed up. We already owned the foundation once. We owned the venues on the circuit. We chartered the banks. We built Black Wall Street with our own hands. We ran farms and trucks and presses and closed the whole loop. It was real, it was ours, and it was built. And then it was burned, or bought out, or traded away for a bigger room in somebody else's house. The blueprint is not lost. It is behind us. We just have to turn around and pick it back up. They kept the deed. It is time we came for it. Stop asking for a bigger room. Go buy the house.